welcome. Welcome to the Church of Jesus Christ, who we have dubbed ourselves as the Tuesday Nighters and is now falling under the title The Book Club. And we're in this new chapter of the book club that we call the suggestion box. This is week 30, but we have more than 20 something more suggestions to go. And I hope they just keep pouring in as you all continue to give us suggestions. Tonight's suggestion was Isaiah 35. Here's what you've accomplished. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. You can take a snapshot of that or just read those numbers. They are quite impressive. But the most important part of this page is the thought that if you'll truly prepare for these Tuesday nights by reading and studying, maybe even taking a couple notes on what you read, highlighting a verse or two that you want to share, and be ready to discuss openly, or at least be ready to open your heart to the discussion that happens. Some of you, I understand, might be too shy to share and just want to take it all in. Whatever role you play tonight, my prayer is that you're blessed, and my prayer is that you prep in advance of. If you didn't get to read this, that's okay. The conversation will get you caught up really quickly. But I will tell you this, I think it's much more valuable when you read ahead and are ready for the discussions. Sometimes they're just a reinforcement to what you already gained yourself from reading. Sometimes it'll completely change your mind on something or even expand your thinking. So again, I hope that you'll be blessed by the exercise called the Tuesday Nighters. Here is what has been represented over these 104 weeks. This is our 105th over the last 104 weeks. It's fabulous when you look at this. I'm stunned at what I'm looking at. All right, let's get to our class. This is week 30. This is Isaiah 35. This is, again, one chapter, as we're prone to do on Tuesday nights. It's 10 verses and 269 words. That's about 1,200 less than we did last week. So know that it's kind of hit or miss. Sometimes a lot, sometimes a little, always a blessing. So let's take a quick review. I hope if I do nothing else, I set the table for the discussion. Maybe it gives you time to clear your thoughts. Maybe it kickstarts a whole nother thought for you sometimes when I share this. So my hope and my prayer is that there is a little bit of inspiration here and that you get a little bit of motivation from it. So 10 verses, my thought was 10 verses provides us this opportunity in advance of reading the 35th chapter of Isaiah to kind of explore Isaiah himself and the book itself in advance. Usually it's much more to work through in these slides, but there wasn't that much. So I thought maybe I'd give you a little bit of an overview of Isaiah. Not deep dive, but enough just to whet your palate. Isaiah lived 700 plus, more than 700 years before Jesus Christ. He prophesied, listen to this, for 64 years. So that in itself is extraordinary. They list that as 750 to 686 BC. Isaiah's name means Yahweh is salvation, and Yahweh is the Hebrew name for God. Isaiah is traditionally believed to have written the entire book of Isaiah. See, some look at his stylistic and thematic variances, meaning the differences, the clear differences in the book itself, and even have some boundaries that say pre this and post that, two different writers possibly. Okay. These people believe there were multiple authors. I am not endorsing one or the other. I'm just reporting. The book of Isaiah focuses on God's authority, God's justice, and God's salvation. I'm going to mute a little bit if I can.
See that bag? It's got 23 clubs and they never won. Thunder Sticks, the Widowmaker. This one, Walbro.
Not quite there yet. Hey, bear with me. That's about all I can touch, I think. Sorry. Okay. All right, just check your devices, please. We're getting some bleed over, and it gets scritches, tinny on the recording. So help us out, please, and thanks. Okay, so again, just so that we get caught up, the book of Isaiah has probably three facets to it: God's authority, His justice, and His salvation. Isaiah, within the book of Isaiah, warns about God's judgment against specifically Israel, but we can apply that to ourselves as well and to those around us as well, because he speaks of Israel's willingness to become sinful or choose sin over righteousness. Isaiah also offers, as I said earlier, hope through his promise, and his promise specifically is that a Messiah is coming. Now we know after the fact this to be Jesus Christ. Isaiah calls for all people to repent. He calls for all people to be faithful. He calls for all people to look forward to this Savior coming. But he specifically speaks to Israel throughout. Now we know 700 years later, Jesus Christ was the promised servant that he spoke of, who had done in simple form or in simple explanation, he had done exactly what his father asked him to do. He suffered, he sacrificed, and he did whatever his father asked him to do and commanded him to do so that he might offer the opportunity for mankind, and again, more specifically, Israel, to redeem themselves. The book of Isaiah is said to be sectioned. There are some who believe into three parts. The easier one, the more palatable one, is two parts because there's clearer delineation in it being separated into two parts. The first part was called the Book of Judgment, the first 39 chapters. It spoke of judgment and warnings of destruction. Okay, for Israel, but also for the nations that were related. God's ultimate reaction to Israel's sinfully, if you will, breaking their covenant with him was this first part, these warnings, very, very dark in the approach, with hopefulness peppered throughout. Okay, the second part of the book that was called that is entitled the Book of Salvation and Restoration were the chapters 40 through 66. Now, in those chapters, a whole different voice seems to be heard. It was one of comfort and hope and restoration. It spoke of God delivering Israel from their exile.
It's not there now.
Bear with me again. I'm so sorry. Okay. The two sections of division are by theme, but also if as a scholar, if you read this, it is said to be distinct styles and context. And thus, many people have surmised that the first message is authored solely by Isaiah himself. The second message, this book of salvation, this book of restoration, is said to be written by multiple authors. I offer that just for kind of food for thought for you to kind of work through, just so you know what the book of Isaiah was. We're reading this 35th chapter, which is almost right in the center of the 66 verses. So it's kind of a fun spot to get started. I read this chapter and took a step back, looking at it through my own lens, if you will, as a beautiful piece of art. Okay, so I hope I'm not going to step on anyone's toes. I'm taking this approach so that you still have specifics to talk through. But I wanted you to take a step back with me and look at it as if it were a portrait of some sort, a written painting. Now, most of us, I think, if not all of us, maybe all of us would agree that the church has always been dynamic. I'm now 50 years in the church, baptized in the church, I think 49 years, coming up to 50 years. And I've always remembered it to be a church that's wide open to God's voice, the energy and the movement and the forward motion of the church was always centered on God speaking to his people and God revealing to his people, much like Isaiah. And so our entire lives, spiritual lives, I would think every one of us would testify to this, that we have spoken of and been spoken to about this Zion. Now, this theme has certainly recently been stirred up and rejuvenated as a focus by way of revelation, by way of song, by way of talk, by way of sermons. And so there's an excitement there. So Isaiah 35 fits the time that we're living in. I believe Isaiah is painting this beautiful picture of Zion. And if you read it, it doesn't begin that way. It actually begins in a wilderness, in the solitude of a wilderness. And he speaks of a blossom rejoicing in the desert. And those poetic, romantic words are the first thing that made me think, oh, this is a painting. He's writing this painting. He's not painting with a brush, but writing it out with a pen. And when I read this blossom rejoicing in the desert, I think of the sidewalk crack where a flower is pushing through the weakness of that crack in the sidewalk, like a blossom rejoicing in the desert. Isaiah lists regions familiar to him. So you probably read cities and regions and areas at the front end, but don't just see it that way. The painting itself was painting that all people will see God's glory. See, to Isaiah, his perspective was just this. He didn't understand the world was like this. So he was painting in actuality that all people would see God's glory. He paints changes and healings taking place. He speaks about weaknesses and feebleness becoming strong. He speaks about fearfulness being overtaken by courage. As the people found in weakness and feebleness and fearfulness would view God saving them. This is what he's painting. Blindness healed, deafness healed. Now, my question to you is, as you read those specifics, did you read them as physical, spiritual, or both? You read about people who were unable to walk or speak, that they would run. Those who couldn't even walk would run. Those who couldn't speak would sing. Was this literal as you read it? Figurative? Or was it both? Did you see the painting that he was writing? He even paints that natural places like wilderness and deserts would be transformed and healed. I think the only quote I lifted out of this chapter said this: the thirsty land, springs of water. Oh, if that's not a painting, I don't know what is. Isaiah then paints this divine highway. We've studied this highway before. This highway called the Way of Holiness. And this specific avenue to Zion could only be and would only be and will only be trekked by God's own. Those that he handpicked, those that had received his RSVP. I looked up RSVP and I don't speak French, so I'm not going to try it, but that's those words in black. Répondez, I'm not going to even try it. I only embarrass myself, and more so I'd embarrass Candace, so I won't do it. But the English interpretation is this: respond if you please. These are they who will respond positively to God's invitation. And I believe it had to please God himself that Isaiah was painting all of this. And painting the fact that he saw them walking, these respondents walking on this road, the way of holiness to Zion. His painting showed them carrying, and this is what he wrote, carrying joy and gladness and songs into Zion. My question for you is, who are these people? How many will there be? Where are they coming from? And the only way to know that is we'd have to search the painting more. You ever stand in front of a painting and then you start looking closer and closer and closer, where even the strokes have meaning? Remember taking some art classes in college. Um, uh, I think the one that mesmerized me was I think it was Picasso's Guernica, and it was abstract. And the more I looked at it, the more I found. That's what I think is true about Isaiah 35. This beautiful written painting has so much within it, but you got to look a little closer, a little deeper. Isaiah saw this vision that he wrote out for us 2,700 years ago, a little bit more than that, in fact, through a lens, his own lens, that had never witnessed an automobile, that had never witnessed any type of phone, let alone a cell phone. Listen to this. Through a lens that had never even seen a coin. Coins had not yet become when he was seeing and trying to capture in this beautiful oral, verbal painting that he painted for us. Yet he painted it. And what he mainly painted was this beautiful city called Zion. And in all of that, I think it can inspire any one of us to ask the simple question that is asked so early in the Songs of Zion. What is that picture that I see so brilliant that it dazzles me?